Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Basel Pod. I'm Sam Basel, joined alongside Jordan Laube. And Jordan, we're here. We're at the 8th division of our 8th division 2025 NFL previews, and it's been a ride. Very excited to talk about the AFC West. Obviously, they've got a team that we've been talking about for pretty much the entire time, that being the Kansas City Chiefs. We've kind of been alluding to them. They've kind of been like a Thanos-like presence, throughout these first 7 episodes. But we're going to get into them. We're also going to get into, obviously, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. So, Jordan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's Friday. We made it, as you said, 8 episodes in. Obviously, we have 1 or 2 more episodes left to go. But in terms of previews and research, we've done, a lot of the legwork. And we were celebrating, just like last Friday, with a Cutwater Tiki Rum Mai Tai. Again, 12.5%. So if you want to have a good time, 2 of these, you're good to go.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into, a very interesting division, a lot of, new storylines for the season, a division that sent 3 teams to the playoffs last year, mind you. So, a lot of serious contenders in the mix here. Let's start off with, obviously, the Super Bowl runner-ups, and obviously before that, the 2-time Super Bowl winners out of their 3 total in this current era with Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, last year we've mentioned it many, many times that this Chiefs team was one of the weakest teams that Pat Mahomes has played with as the starting quarterback, but still it was one that went to the Super Bowl. So just kind of putting the bow up on last year, where exactly was this team one of the weakest that you've seen in the Patrick Mahomes era?
I would say it was pass rush defensively was like the big focal point of where they struggled. But offensively, it was just lack of depth at receiver, especially after Rashee Rice went out. And then the offensive line play was just, especially a tackle, what really, really struggled. Like the interior offensive line was obviously awesome. Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, and Trey Smith is one of the best interior groups I've ever watched play together. And they did it for 2 years together, which was maybe even 3 years. They were really freaking good together. And then lots of shortcomings in Jawan Taylor, and then a shuffle of Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamatia. I think someone else might have played left tackle for them. I can't remember exactly, but, it was a really rough rotation at the tackle spots. And that ultimately, when you run into a really good pass rush team with really good edges like the Eagles, one thing's going to lead to another. And that defensive interior, as good as the offensive interior was for the Chiefs, they met their match in the Eagles. And not that they lost or got beat a ton, but they got beat enough that Pat was getting pressured left, right, and up the middle consistently. And that really, not having sound receivers, an aging and out-of-shape Travis Kelce, and just a defense that couldn't keep up with that Eagles offense because of the lacking pass rush, it was this whole culmination of dog shit that all just happened in one game, and that happened to be the Super Bowl, right? So, they added depth in multiple areas, and they added multiple talented pieces. So now it looks like they're heading back in the right direction, and they should be much better this season, at least from an analytics and on paper standpoint. Record might be worse. Mahomes might not be as good, and we'll get into kind of the reason why a little later in this segment. But, I have higher hopes for the Chiefs roster this year that I did last year. I don't know if that's going to directly result in them making the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to talk about that receiving core that they had. You talk about an aging Travis Kelce. Was there anything else about, Mahomes' targets last year that you felt like, kind of caused them to come up short in the Super Bowl? Or even, was there anything with Mahomes that you felt like he was lacking last year? Because, I don't want to immediately – I don't want to talk about where this team came up short and then just not address any problems that came up with Patrick Mahomes. Did you feel like anywhere there?
Yeah, his deep passing was the worst it's ever been in his career. He had I believe, a 24% completion rate on deep passes when he's normally around the mid-40 to mid-50 range. Threw a lot of picks on deep passes, was incredibly inaccurate in general. He had I think his adjusted completion rate was 24%. So that's just straight up quarterback accuracy when he's normally, in the 60, 70 range, and his regular completion is like 40 to 50 range, low 60s maybe. But his accuracy was 24%, which is just horrible and not like Pat Mahomes on the deep ball. And they don't go deep as often as they used to. But when you go deep with someone who's, got one of the best arms in the NFL and is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, you expect to hit more than double that, right? And it's just tough because you look at Xavier Worthy, one of the fastest players in the NFL. They had Hollywood Brown, another speed threat. Rashee Rice is an underneath yak threat, as is Travis Kelce. They had the pieces there to have a good offense. And I think once Rashee went down, everything kind of fell by the wayside and they didn't really figure it out after that. And I think those struggles came up, especially because Pat couldn't go to Kelce as much. So he had to throw to a rookie wide receiver who was more of a gimmick player. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think Xavier Worthy's a fine receiver. He's a good route runner, obviously great speed, or not even great speed, elite speed. But, people will look at yards and box score and say, oh yeah, he was great. And especially in, the last 3 weeks in that playoff run, he was great. But if you look at how he got those yards, I mean, that Super Bowl is inflating his playoff performance. He got, I think he had 3 targets, got 1 catch for 9 yards until the third quarter when he caught that massive bomb, or maybe that was even the fourth quarter. He was not the guy in KC. And I don't think, frankly, anyone really was the guy in KC last year once Rashee went down. So I think Pat Mahomes needs to improve the deep ball. And I think they need to throw the deep ball more to get him used to doing it again, because he did it a ton when Eric Bieniemy was calling this offense and he was hitting every level of the field. Matt Nagy does not do that. And I think, yes, Andy Reid's calling the offense, but Matt Nagy is helping design it. And ever since he's taken over as the offensive coordinator, you have seen Mahomes' efficiency rates and where he's targeting on the field completely shift from what he was doing his first 3 to 4 years in the league. And that's why he's dropped off in the last 2 years, especially, is the offensive design that Nagy has employed is counterintuitive to what Mahomes does great as a quarterback. And it's not that he can't hit the short throws, because he obviously can, but when he's doing that 60% of the time, and then you're asking him to throw deep and throw intermediate when you need it, he's not doing it as often as he was back then. So it's not that it's taboo or unknown to him, but it's just he's not repping it as often. So he's not as good in those areas. And I think that's where Pat Mahomes can take that next step. And what the offense needs to tailor to him towards is doing more intermediate and deep passes, even if the success rate isn't great on those and you don't need to take those shots. Do it anyways, because guess what? You went 15-2 playing dink and dunk football for most of the season with injuries all over your roster on the offensive side of the ball and a defense that wasn't that good, and you still made it to the Super Bowl. So why not try to be extravagant and really take more risk than Pat Mahomes has ever taken? Because guess what? A risky Pat Mahomes is probably still going to go 12-5.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I wanted to ask about Rashee Rice a little bit too. Obviously, you talked about, his injury obviously really was a huge blow to the Chiefs receiving core. And they're not out of muddy water yet, right? Obviously, right now they're still deliberating a suspension for Rashee Rice, according to Adam Schefter. The NFL, before I get into it, obviously this was upcoming potential suspension is for a street racing incident back in March of 2024, for those of you who are not aware. So the NFL right now, according to reports from Adam Schefter, wants at least, or at the most, 8 games in a suspension. Obviously very significant. And it seems like the Chiefs and the NFL are trying to do their, trying to get negotiations to work that out to maybe something a little bit lower. But say Rashee Rice gets suspended for those full 8 games. Where can Kansas City, look elsewhere?
I think that's why they drafted Jalen Royals, is just in case that he loses that time. Jalen Royals is very similar, uber savant, I guess, in the short to intermediate game, especially on the short side. Those short crossing routes, the short out routes, the hitch routes, and just getting really good yak is what Jalen Royals is great at. And he's kind of a clone of Rashee in that style. And him going to the Chiefs, because if you have one of those, that's great. If you have 2, along with Kelce, the first route concept I'm thinking of is mesh, where you get Royals and Rashee crossing each other shallow on drag routes. Travis Kelce's finding a soft spot in the zone and sitting over the middle. And then if all else fails, you got Xavier Worthy going deep, and then you have a receiver out of the backfield, whether it's Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, or Brashard Smith. All of them are good receiving backs. Like, you have options. Like, that is probably, I don't know if it is, but that was probably the first route concept they put in camp this year was mesh, because mesh has taken over the NFL. It's become a huge play, and especially at the college level as well. So, and that would be perfect for this kind of offense, and that would still give Pat 3 levels of the defense to attack. You can either hit short with Royals and Rasheed, over the middle and intermediate with Kelce on a spot route, or a deep post, deep go route, or a wheel route from Xavier Worthy or the backfield. Like, you have so many options with that, and that would get the most out of Pat Mahomes' skill set. Obviously, you won't run that all the time, but if that's going to be their base pass concept, which I think fits the skill set of who they're going to employ on the offense, that's the best way to do it. And obviously, Marquise Brown can kind of fill in there. Tyquan Thornton, kind of that big body speed guy like Marcus Valdes-Scantling that they had a few years back. So you have guys that fit that kind of mold that Mahomes is doing good with, and it can also help him get back to what he was doing early in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously, I kind of want to talk about Travis Kelce a little bit. It seems like the retirement conversations are not necessarily picking up, but they're still there. They're lingering. What do you feel like is a good timeline for Travis Kelce at this point in his career?
I think he's got a year or two left. I think he just wants to go out on top of the Super Bowl, which you can't knock him for that. But, just in terms of skill and where he's at in his career, like, I don't know if he's going to play. If I was the Chiefs, if he does not look better than he did last year by like week 5 or week 6, I'm thinking about splitting reps at tight end. And not because it's anything that Travis Kelce is doing wrong. Like, he's still going to have that chemistry with Mahomes that they've had since Mahomes entered the league. But you want to add more athleticism and juice. And we saw a breakout with Noah Gray, and they drafted Jared Wiley to be kind of the successor to Travis Kelce, because Wiley specializes as a split-out slot, big-body tight end, can play H-back, isn't a great blocker, but has really good receiving skills for his size. And when I remember scouting him at TCU, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is like kind of like Travis Kelce and what he can do in the slot and understanding zones and sitting down underneath coverages. And they drafted him. And I was like, that's like a perfect developmental pick to get him ready by year 3. And I think if Kelce isn't ready week 5, week 6, and isn't showing what he was in 2022 and 2021, I think you start plug and playing those guys and rotating them in more often. And that's going to allow this offense to evolve in a different way, where you're not just relying on one guy to take over the tight end spot. You can use Noah Gray, who's more your traditional tight end, and you can use Wiley, who's that move tight end, H-back, big slot, can go out wide. That Travis Kelce encompasses, at least at his peak, encompassed both of those players in one guy. And that's what made him so special. So, I wouldn't drop him under 60% of snaps, but I think you got to go like, 2/3 of the snap it's Kelce, and then it's the other third. Those two are splitting and rotating in for him to get their legs ready and get them going. Because if I'm not mistaken, Noah Gray, it's a contract year for him. I might be wrong on that. I'll actually look it up. But then you have Jared Wiley, who's the heir apparent, it seems like. He actually signed a new contract, so he's under contract till 2027. But either way, that gives you 2 tight ends after this year to kind of fill the holes that Travis Kelce's leaving behind if they don't add anyone else. And I think they both can do that really well. That's what I would like to see personally. I love Kelce. Like, I've always liked his play and his attitude and how he is as a player. But, it's 34, 35. End of his career is coming up very quickly, and it showed on tape last year.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Like, me asking that question definitely like is not me trying to be like, it's time for him to go. But it's definitely it's going to be a conversation that lingers. So I feel like it's important
absolutely
for us to address. Defensively, how do they beef up their secondary?
Secondary, they added a good amount of guys. Christian Fulton they brought in, who was great on the Chargers last year and is going to fit in really well in the Steve Spagnuolo, cover 2, cover 3 mixed defense. So I think he's a really good fit in the secondary. For depth pieces, they also added Mike Edwards, who's a super savvy veteran. And then they got Noah Williams in the third round, who's a really solid corner as well. So they're deep at corner, a bit deeper than they have been at years past, even with losing Charvarius Ward was 49ers, not the Chiefs most recently. But either way, they did lose, some secondary pieces over the past couple of years. So they're kind of reloading that now. I think that's going to be helped with up front where they've been lacking in pass rush. They also added some good pass rushers as well. George Karlaftis is a fine to good defensive end, but he's not good at pass rushing. He's just kind of a body out there. It's really Chris Jones has been the only pass rusher on that defense. I think he's accounted for over half their pressures over the past 2 seasons, which is just asinine to even say that out loud. So they went out and got his, apparent successor, but someone who can contribute right away. And Ormar Norman Lott, who's just a freak defensive tackle out of Tennessee. And then Ashton Lloyd out of Louisville was a really fun prospect to watch, really good athleticism, and could be a really good solid option opposite George Karlaftis and Mike Dana to kind of just fill in, be a pass rush specialist at first, and then work his way into the starting rotation. I mean, the defense got better up front and in the secondary with those additions, and I think is good. That's going to help get Mahomes on the field and run more of these concepts that cater to his skill set. And the defense is just going to play better in general, especially on the passing side. Run defense, they've always been good and always will be good, but pass defense is where they kind of fell off towards the end of last season.
Yeah. And I know you wanted to talk about Matt Nagy a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, you felt like maybe him designing offensive plays might hurt Mahomes a little bit, but I mean, where do you feel like that's going to kind of come down to the wire later on this year?
It's the playoffs. It's always the playoffs. Especially with a team as good as the Chiefs and a quarterback as good as Mahomes. If you can't figure this out by, week 10, week 11, you don't have him really passing deep or doing anything else. If I'm Andy Reid, I'm stepping in and be like, yeah, you're done. I'm calling offense and I'm designing everything from here on out. Because Andy Reid's done it. He's shown he can call up a really good air raid pass offense, right? And he's one of the pioneers of the air raid back to his college days. And that's kind of not Matt Nagy's forte. He's a fine run designer. He's good in the dink and dunk and designing targets out of the backfield and underneath. And that's why he was so good in Chicago his first years, because that wasn't really the thing in the NFL. That wasn't the meta, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. And that's why Mitch Trubisky looked so good his rookie year, was because he employed an offense like that and that catered to Mitch Trubisky's skill set. So, it's really going to come down to where this team is come playoff time and what they're kind of running, because if they do the same thing that they've been doing the past 2 years, teams are going to be expecting that. They're going to be loading up and knowing they're going short, and they're just going to blitz the shit out of them and sit in a fire 2 zone with 4 underneath and 2 over the top. Be like, yeah, Pat Mahomes has sucked throwing deep lately. Try to beat us over the top. Yeah, you have Xavier Worthy, but if Mahomes isn't accurate, what good does it do you? It doesn't do you any good. But The thing that might help the most for this offense, I believe, is the acquisition of Josh Simmons out of Ohio State at the end of the first round. This was a top 10 offensive tackle talent, really solid. And, we'll get into him a little bit later, but I think he's going to be a big, big, big focal point for this offense.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to get into Josh Simmons in a bit, but one thing that we wanted to talk about in our notes, obviously, is this happens, anytime a team is really good in any sport, specifically in the NFL. I feel like it's happened a lot. Like you saw it with the Patriots. Now we're seeing it with the Chiefs, kind of just like this idea of, the
Chiefs, Thunder in basketball,
the Thunder. Yeah. Thunder now. I'm trying to think of some other situations where it's happened. Just when the Chiefs are this good, they're going to be on TV a lot. When they're, and specifically the national big slot games, what's the America's Game of the Week?
Yeah,
Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. They're going to be in the playoffs a lot. They've been in the past, 3 Super Bowls. So people are going to get a lot of Chiefs airtime. With that, there's a lot of they're going to see them win a lot. And then there's going to be a lot of accusations of, benefiting from calls, rigging games, and all that stuff that comes with really good teams. And it's, to me, and I'm sure for you as well, like it's kind of gotten to a point where the accusations of rigging games has gone off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah,
in my opinion. So I know you have some stats and numbers that would kind of dispel any accusations. Although, no offense to the great numbers that you pulled up, I feel like it's not going to help because people are so.
No, it's not.
But I would love to give you some time to make your case on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are going to have their opinions. Week 1, I know some bullshit's going to happen where everyone on Twitter is going to be like, the Chiefs get all the calls. Like, it's going to be something like, and it's.
I mean, last year, right? Week 1 last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and like everyone's like, oh, Jawan Taylor's jumping off sides. I'm like, no, he's not. He's just timing up the snap really well. Like, as offensive linemen, we're taught, like, as soon as you hear the G of the go that tells the center to snap, you're moving. Like, that's what I teach my guys. That's what I was taught in high school, right? Like, and they do that in the NFL. It's called simulating a snap. And all great. Lane Johnson is the best at it. Sometimes it looks like Lane Johnson is moving and that ball hasn't moved, but that ball is starting to slide, right? Like, and it plays with people's eyes because the NFL footballs don't have like the white stripes on the panels. They only have the laces. And depending on the center's grip, if they have a traditional grip, like they're going to turn their wrist like this and it's going to look like the ball's not moving, right? Like, so there's a lot of people that are like, oh, he's jumping off sides, he's doing this. And I'm like, okay, but when you slow it down, he's actually moving when the ball is too. Like, and you expect a ref to see that live, like a millisecond difference of when the ball moves and he moves. Like, sorry, it's human error. Do you want robots reffing the NFL? You could, but not going to happen. But anyways, getting into the numbers, okay? In terms of penalties in the aggregate against the Chiefs, granted, situational, there's not data on it right now, but I know situational people will say when the Chiefs get the flags, it's at peak moments of the game, and when they need a drive to continue or when they need to stop on defense, it seems like the refs are helping them. Look, I'm going to deny that. Like, I don't think that's really the case. I think most of the time these penalties are being committed as ticky-tacky as they are. They're still flags. Like, you can't just call something or not call something because it's a close game and it's exciting. Like, the call is the call. You make the call, and we saw that in the first Super Bowl between the Chiefs and Eagles on Bradbury's hold on Juju Smith. Like, he clearly tugs the jersey, and that clearly impedes him on the route. Like, that's plain as day the best example of it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Getting into the numbers. The Chiefs were tied 10th in the most flags called against them at 142. They had the 11th most penalty yards against them at 954.
Wow.
They were 16th in penalty yardage difference, so they were plus 20. So that means they were teams were penalized 20 more yards than they were. So pretty relatively close split, and they were middle of the pack in the league in difference.
Do you know who was number one?
I think the Vikings were. Let me pull that up. I can pull it back up real quick. Penalty.
I would love to just see like what the number one was. Like
yeah, let me pull that up, and that was net yards, right? So net yards, yeah, Vikings they benefited the most at 415 yards of net, and then the team that was affected the most was Baltimore at 367. So or negative 367.
Yeah.
So pretty neat split, right? Like one team's at 400, the other's at 300. Chiefs are at 20. Like,
yeah.
And if you're averaging like 7 yards a flag, 10 yards, like 8 yards a flag, like that's a shit ton more flags you need to call to even get close to that, like as egregious as that split is, right? So on average per game, the Chiefs' opponents were penalized 0.76 times more per game. So meaning basically less than one more flag per game that their opponent got versus what the Chiefs got. So flag total and flag yardage was relatively even between opponents on full season and per game basis. And then the Chiefs only got 25 first downs as a result of penalties. The league average was 29 to 26. So 4 more first downs across a 17-game span doesn't sound like a lot, but one more first down in, basically 4 games can be a big deal and can shift momentum in a big way, right? Like, which momentum is another big conversation, which I'm sure we'll discuss in the amended piece, but whatever. And then in terms of individual player, Jawan Taylor was called for a penalty 14 times, which is the second most for an individual in the entire NFL. And Jawan Taylor is one of the most egregious, one of the biggest talking points when it comes to egregious non-penalties called. He was called the second most. And the ones that he didn't get called on, maybe there was probably a holding or two that was missed, but that's going to happen for every player and for every team. Like, if refs were perfect, holding would be called on every play because holding does happen on every play. Like, especially at the NFL level with how massive and strong and athletic these dudes are. Like, someone has to hold for something to break through. And unfortunately, refs miss it. And that's just how the game is. That's from Pee-wee all the way up to the NFL. And it's been like that since the 50s. Like, it's been a thing in the NFL, right? And then a lot of the Chiefs rigging games, in my opinion, is just people not understanding the rules, right? We talked about simulating the snap and tackles jumping early. The other big one, when people are like, oh, he's holding, there's a stipulation in NFL rules that if a defensive player decides to use a rip move, which you don't see anymore because of this rule and it's been a thing, where if they do rip move, where they're taking their arm from their hip and they're shooting it up towards the sky to get the lineman's arms off that, you are, as long as you're not impeding their path to the quarterback and you're working with them through their rip, you can keep your arms on him and locked up and not hold, as long as you don't impede his path to the quarterback. And a lot of people will see this and an arm across their chest, and they're like, oh, he's holding. It's not a hold. If you rip, it's not going to get called in the NFL unless you're yanking and turning the guy as he's ripping. And that happened, I think, like week 3 and then like week 10 and then 14, something happened like that with the Chiefs where like someone had a rip move. They got rolled out of the pocket and Mahomes stepped up right by them. And they're like, that's a hold. I'm like, literally read the NFL rule book. Like, yeah, in high school, that's a hold, but not in the NFL. The rules are different. Just like in the NBA, you get a gather step. In high school, you don't get that. And I think college, you don't get that either. I might be wrong on that, but like the gather step is a big entertainment piece for the NBA, and it keeps the game flowing well, so you don't call it travel every other possession. It's the same thing with the NFL. If someone makes a rip move, you're allowed to stay engaged as long as you're not twisting and pulling their jersey or the player themselves, right? And then the last point I make is, and this is not me supporting the refs in any way, like the refs have to be better, like across the league, because of what I said with misholding calls.
Across sports, man.
Like across all sports, reffing has to improve. You know, like baseball is the biggest outlier in that, right? Like strikes, which is why the robo umps are coming in. You know, like that needs to change in the MLB. The NFL is it's constantly moving. It's not like every other sport where, like, you know, that there's something static that you can look at and you can tell right then and there if it's a flag or not, right? Like the NFL guys are moving. It's big mass. And we get all these slow motion replays and all these angles and all these close-ups. Like most of the time, refs are 10 to 20 yards away, if not further, when they're trying to make these judgment calls, and they might not have the best angle on anything. So again, this is not me defending the refs, but it's just painting a realistic picture of what we see is not what they see on the field. Like, it's just not. And like, that's frustrating. It sucks that we can't get it right every time. But like I said earlier, if we got it right every time, there would be a flag on every friggin' play in the NFL, and that would become unwatchable.
I totally agree. I totally agree with everything you just said. In terms of the refs, like, I totally agree where it's like, we are so spoiled as football watchers to have so much technology at our hands, like from our couch. Like we have such a better view of the game, I feel, than like you said, people 10, 15 yards away on the field. And on that, like, you know, in instead of just saying, oh, the refs should just get better, like when you take that into account where it's like, oh, maybe they just have a bad view, it's like, we just got to get more technology into this. Like we just need, and it needs to be quicker. Like that's the thing. Obviously, when you bring in more technology, you know, when you don't have enough technology to get the rules right, people complain. When you bring in a lot of technology and then you're spending a long time reviewing and slowing the game down, people complain. Both of those, in my opinion, are totally valid. We just need to figure out which one is worse. And I think the one that is worse is the one where we don't have the technology to analyze them.
Agreed.
Because in 40 years, like say a play in the Super Bowl this year is completely game-changing and they completely get it wrong even after video review, right? We will remember that forever.
Mm-hmm.
But say they get that play wrong and then they review it and then they end up making the right call on the field, we're never going to remember how long that review took, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, we're never going to remember those games where it's like, oh, man, it took so long. But it's like people remember bad calls forever. So I just think I think with refereeing, like, there is, like, a physical, like, and mental limit that, like, you could be in terms of quality as a sporting official. Right?
Exactly.
We just need to incorporate that technology to be faster and more accurate so that we don't have to have this conversation anymore.
Yes, agreed. And I think the best example of that, of like what's worse, and no one remembers how long it took to review something, the NFC Championship game between the Saints and the Rams on the no-call pass interference. That forced the Saints to kick a field goal, and the Rams were able to win the game later because of that possession. Like, if that happens, like if that's called and the clock doesn't stop, in theory, like granted, they could have fumbled the snap, they could have fucked up an exchange, like, yeah, anything could have happened. But 99.99% of the time, they get first down, they're running down the clock, they're kicking a field goal with 3 seconds left, and it's going through the uprights because it was going to be like a 25-yarder. And like, yeah, they've been missed. Field goals have been blocked. We don't know what actually would have happened. But like, come on, use your fucking brains, people. Like, we need a better review system in the NFL. We need to open it up to penalties that are not called, in my opinion. And like, yeah, like that doesn't, like, it's not going to be perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than the shit we have right now. And part of that is why people are talking about the Chiefs so much and how games are rigged. And there's all this speculation, especially with sports gambling, which is becoming a pandemic across the fucking country. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. But like, as a sports gambler myself, I will say that like like there needs to be regulation on it, and it's unfortunate there's not. Like, but it's such a money grab, and the NFL knows it's an entertainment league, so it's going to do this money grab with it. And with the officiating, they know it's going to get them talked about and give them views. And the NFL is king right now. They get views up the ass. Like preseason, a preseason game got watched more than Game 7 in the NBA Finals this year.
Yeah,
like that's stupid. Like, that's just stupid traction and stupid viewership that you get. Like, and the NFL knows that, and they leverage that. And that's just how it is. It needs to change some way, shape, or form. And the next step, which I think they're doing a good job of, is bringing back reviews for penalties that are called and making sure they actually are penalties, and having the chip in the footballs to measure first down. So when it's in a scrum and you can't really tell, there's something that tells you where the ball goes. And yeah, it's going to be slow. They've done it a few times in the preseason, and it's taken 2 to 3 minutes. But if it's going to give us a more accurate game, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And also, like, people are mad about if people get mad about the chip in the ball slowing down the game. Like, think about how much madder those people would be when it's time to have the old volunteer guys come out with the physical chain and place the ball. Which, don't get me wrong, I always thought that was like a fun part of the game.
That was.
I really enjoy like the physical chain, but embrace the technology, and like it'll only get faster and faster over time because we'll just get better and better at it.
Absolutely.
My last point on the whole Chiefs rigging and all this stuff, like, it's gotten to a point where we see in so many other sports that not only are there voices crying out that sports are rigged, but also to the fact that, which the NFL has actually kind of addressed in like their own like cheeky way with some commercials and stuff over the last few years. But I mean, there have been people have gone as far to say like, sports are scripted, which is like, all right. And I know most of those are a joke, but the way it dominates a lot of sports conversations now, especially on social media, really frustrates me. And to that, all I just want to say is, I watch scripted sports. I watch wrestling like once to twice a week, okay? I know, and I'm not trying to make myself an expert on anything, so but it's like I have an idea of what scripted sports entertainment looks like. I also know what it looks like when they're not doing a very good job of it. You know what I mean? Like something like pro wrestling definitely has its ups and downs, and so I feel like if they were doing a real bad job at it, we'd be able to figure it out.
Absolutely.
But let's keep moving on, and let's talk about our dark horse. You mentioned him earlier, offensive tackle Josh Simmons. What do you like out of this guy?
He's just so damn good in pass protection, which is what the Chiefs have been lacking in. Like I said earlier, would have been a top 10 pick if not for the injury. He had a patellar tendon injury, which is kind of like a big red flag in NFL circles, but obviously he's had a great recovery, looking like he's going to be the starting left tackle for the Chiefs. And in 2 preseason games, like, it hasn't been a big sample size, but he hasn't allowed a single pressure or a pass rush win to his opposition in those snaps. And the clips from camp, like, he's throwing NFL starting edge rushers to the dirt and pinning them down. Like, you don't see a rookie do that, let alone a veteran. Like, he's been just awesome. He's exactly what the Chiefs need in their left tackle. He's exactly what Mahomes will need to make this offense functional going forward. And, if, like I said, like, if he was fully healthy, I think the Pats take him over Will Campbell at 4th overall. Like, not even top 10 pick, he'd be top 5. Like, he's that good.
That's awesome. I love explaining a dark horse with just, man, he's just so damn good.
Dude, he's just so damn good. And it sucks because it's like, yeah, he was injured. So, like, he didn't have a large sample size his senior year, and he was, like, working his way to be better his junior year. So I wish I had more, like,
totally.
I wish I had more to say, like, yeah, his footwork is really good, but we don't know if that footwork's still going to translate with the patellar tendon. It looks like it has, but camp or preseason can get kind of, overhyped and over-exaggerated. But just from what I'm seeing, this is a franchise left tackle. Like, based on what I saw on film when I was scouting him, based on the reports from camp, how the Chiefs coaching staff is talking about him, like, this is going to be a home run slam dunk pick for them. And people are going to be like, how did this guy fall to 31st? And how, again, did the Chiefs get some unreal talent at this position?
Totally. And then finally, the burning question for the Chiefs. Look, this squad has accomplished a lot. They've won 3 Super Bowls. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls. But, the people I feel like hungriest for more rings are the people like Patrick Mahomes that have already been on the mountaintop and just they don't want to get off, right? So what can Mahomes and company finally do to get back to being one of the top teams in the NFL? They were a top team in the NFL last year, but it was clearly one of the worst teams, not worst with a T, but worst Chiefs teams we've seen make a Super Bowl. So what can they do to not only be a Super Bowl contender, but a great Super Bowl contender and a Super Bowl winner?
My Hollywood Squares answer is let Pat Mahomes call the offense and say, fuck whatever Matt Nagy calls. I'm running whatever I want to do. Like, that's what I would do if I'm Pat Mahomes. I'm like, I'm not running any of this shit this guy says. Oh, he wants to run inside zone? Fuck it. 4 verts. Let's go after it 1st and 10, right? Like, that's my fun answer. But my actual answer is he just has to take risk. And I think that's kind of, he's getting scared of taking risk. He's not taking deep shots against double coverage. And like, yeah, he doesn't have Tyreek Hill anymore. So he doesn't have that faith in one of the most electric deep ball catchers in the league and just letting him go down and outspeed everybody. But he does have Xavier Worthy, who can do that. Not as well as Tyreek did, but, can do it and should be better in year 2. And you get Rasheed back, and you have more offensive weapons, and you have a better offensive line. Just take risk. Like, you're the greatest quarterback of this generation post Tom Brady. Like, you are allowed to play outside of structure, and you're allowed to play outside of the game plan, because you know what? People are going to remember you being that guy and going after it that way. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember a single Pat Mahomes highlight in the past 2 years. I don't. Like, I don't remember a significant play Pat Mahomes has made in the past 2 years. But I do remember all of the cross-body throws he made rolling out his rookie year. Or not his rookie year, but his second year. I remember his second MVP season, how often he was flaring the ball in between two safeties closing, and he found someone on a post, and they would break away for a big play. Him scrambling and outspeeding defenders and being just faster than them to get first downs and touchdowns and putting the team on his back. Those are the Pat Mahomes moments I remember. And highlights aren't everything, but when we remember quarterback legacies and just player legacies in general, that's what we think about. Like when we think about Derrick Henry, we don't think about, 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards in a cloud of dust and him running over guys. We remember him stiff arming and juking and outspeeding everyone in his massive size. Same thing with Adrian Peterson. Same thing with Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson getting triple teamed and still going up and getting it. Like that's what we remember about these players. And that's how I want to remember Pat Mahomes, not dink and dunk, short game, take what the defense is giving me. Like, be a fucking playmaker, man, because that's who he is. Like, and it sucks. We're 40 minutes talking about the Chiefs, and no one wants to listen to 40 minutes of Chiefs talk. But like, that's where it has to go. Like, I want him to get back to that so badly because he's the most fun player to watch in the NFL when he's on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you gave your Hollywood Squares answer and your serious answer, but what's your Wheel of Fortune answer?
My Wheel of Fortune answer.
Prancing in the park. Now.
Throw the ball deep.
Yeah. Ooh, no, that's actually throw the ball dear. Sorry. You are now bankrupt. I can't stand Wheel of Fortune. Not to go off on a side.
Really? Oh, man.
I can't stand it. Because, look, my whole life was a Jeopardy guy. R.I.P. the GOAT, Alex Trebek. Mm-hmm. And Jeopardy is because I do think Ken Jennings is a good host.
Yeah, but he does a really good job, I think.
I'm sorry, not to be the way Stephen A. Smith is with Michael Jordan, but you can't beat Trebek. I'm sorry,
no, you can't. No,
Ken's doing a great job.
Yeah, he is.
And Jeopardy, it was you really had to know stuff, and you got to really be a good academic person, right? Wheel of Fortune is just
it's
guessing phrases that they ran out of commonplace phrases in the mid 90s, and now it's just sentences that no one has ever uttered in their entire life, and that's
exactly
what me about it.
Here's what I will say. My favorite categories before and after, where it's 3 or 4 words, and the first 2 to 3 words are one phrase, and the last 2 to 3 words are another phrase. I do enjoy the shit out of that. I will say.
Jeopardy?
Yeah, no, on a Wheel of Fortune. I mean, Jeopardy does that too. Jeopardy does that with the letters and sounds and shit like that. Where it gives you a definition of 2 words, and you have to figure out what's scrambled and which one's not. It's really neat. But Wheel of Fortune does that in their own way. I enjoy both. This has been my pastime since being on leave. Haven and I will sit in the living room, we'll put on Game Show Network, and we'll watch Jeopardy and Family Feud and Wheel of Fortune, and we'll have a great time, and even the new one live shows we'll throw on at night if we're, around and in the living room. But yeah.
Love it. All right, let's get into it. That was one of our better side tangents. Let's get into
that was great.
Obviously a team that struggled in the past couple of years, but they've made a couple of improvements on the defensive side of the ball that could be a little frightening for teams around the league. So where do you feel like they've improved the most on defense?
Yeah, I was thinking when I was writing that write-up of this defense is frightening, it made me think of So Appalled by Kanye West in that group. And I think it was Pusha T. He goes, frightening, so fucking frightening. That is what I think of when I think of the Denver Broncos defense. They were first in EPA per play allowed, first in EPA per drop back allowed, fourth in EPA per rush allowed, and to break it down further, fourth in PFF defensive grade, 11th in run, 8th in tackling, 5th in pass defense, 7th in coverage. This was the best defense in the league last year, and that was encapsulated with Patrick Surtain winning Rookie of the Year. He had an awesome season. I had Zach Bond over him because I think Zach Bond meant more to that Eagles defense and was really the pillar of that defense, and he doesn't get enough credit. But Pat Surtain locked up the best receivers week in and week out and did not get beat by the best receivers on a consistent basis. It was just a freak. And with that, the pass rush was sick too. I mean, Zach Allen broke out. Nick Bonito broke out. Both of them posted career highs in pressures, sacks, and stops plus TFLs in the run game. Pressure rate, Zach Allen posted a career high. Nick Bonito was a little more efficient last year than he was this year, but he was still really good. I think he had a 14% pressure rate. The year before, 17, which is elite. But still, both of them were really good. And they were obviously surrounded by John Franklin-Meyer, who was really good, former Jet, as you know. DJ Jones was solid. Jonathan Cooper was good there too. Jonah Ellis is going to start to get more reps, which is great. It's not in my notes, but someone I want to say who's been injured pretty much his entire career and hasn't had a chance to shine. Drew Sanders would be so fucking good in this defense if he could stay healthy. Like, would probably be a top 10 linebacker out the gate, but he's just never on the field. And it's so unfortunate. Like, he blitzes well. He covers well. He's big enough to play on the edge. Like, he's a fun player, and it just sucks he hasn't seen the field. But anyways, we talked about Pat Surtain, who's locked down. But this defense added more talent to an already really good defense. They get Talanoa Hufanga from the 49ers, who was friggin' awesome in 2023, had a share of injuries in 2024. Same thing with Dre Greenlaw, another 49ers player, linebacker, obviously had an Achilles tear running out to go on the field during the Super Bowl, which is just another one of those like chief taboo moments, like just happened, or voodoo moments. Sorry, not taboo. But then they get Brandon Jones from the Dolphins. He's a really good safety as well. They draft Jahdae Barron with their first round pick. I like Jaquan McMillan, but Jahdae Barron's going to be a damn good nickel on this defense. So hopefully he can find a spot at like strong safety or maybe even free safety in some situations. Savion Jones, defensive tackle, is pretty good. And Q Robinson out of Alabama as an edge was picked in the 4th round. Like, I agree with the 4th round value, but he is a damn good pass rusher, man. Like, he's not a good run defender, but as a designated pass rusher, he is really fun to watch get to work. And I think he's perfect for what this defense kind of needed to take them to the next level. Like, yeah, small sample size for him as rookie year. It'll probably be 200 snaps, maybe pushing 3, but he's going to be a really good pass rusher for them for a long time. Think like Baron Browning, who's now in the Cardinals, like that kind of player that you're going to get out of Q.
Absolutely. And on the offensive side of the ball, Bo Nix, year 2. What do you like out of him? Are you feeling, may I ask, Bodacious this year?
I am feeling Bodacious. In my first watch through Bo, I really liked him. And then in my second watch through, I was kind of like, does this really translate to the NFL? I kind of, dropped him down my rankings quite a bit. And obviously it did translate to the NFL. He still struggles under pressure and, isn't able to avoid sacks as much as other quarterbacks. He had a 25+% pressure to sack rate, which is kind of bad. But outside of that, was a good quarterback. And we can see that in how this offense progressed throughout the season. And obviously, I had this team ranked as the 3rd worst team coming into last season, and they proved me wrong in every which way. And that started with Bo Nix, right? So over the course of the season, they were 16th and 17th in EPA per play and drawback and rush EPA. But in the final third of the season, they were 7th in EPA per play and per drawback and 14th in EPA per rush, despite having a really shallow running back room. So really good to see from Bo Nix kind of lead this offense and push them to where they need to get to. Cortland Sutton is going to be the wide receiver 1, and he's a good wide receiver 1. Now he's got another year in the Sean Payton offense. He should be taking his game to another level and have a career year. I think he's entering year 9, which is crazy to say because he was a 2017 draft pick, if I'm not mistaken, and was one of my favorites in that class. Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant are going to compete for wide receiver 2 reps. I lean more towards Troy Franklin, but I've been hearing awesome things about Pat Bryant. So maybe they'll swap and they'll switch picks. I just love Troy because I think he's a good intermediate route runner, and him and Bo have that connection from Oregon. So I thought it was a good process to pick him. We'll see what his role is this year and how he plays into that. Evan Ingram picked up a free agency. He's going to play that joker or big slot role in the Sean Payton offense, and he's going to have another big year. I don't think we've seen the best of Evan Ingram yet, and that might happen this year. Marvin Mims is also someone who could plug into the slot. Obviously had some massive plays at the end of last season that helped get them into the playoffs. He's going to have a big year as well, I believe. And their rushing attack improved. They added J.K. Dobbins, who's one of the most efficient rushers per carry, and R.J. Harvey, who is J.K. Dobbins' clone. Like, if you want J.K. Dobbins, like, you know what's crazy? They're almost the same age. R.J. Harvey's 24, I believe. Dobbins is 26 or 25, which is wild to say that. But, you know, both are good and both are similar and will provide a home run juice that this offense was missing in the run game from last year. And then this offensive line was one of the best in the NFL last season. I think PFF had them 7th or 6th, maybe even a little bit higher. I was not high in the offensive line. Obviously, they proved me wrong. This is going to be a really, really good offense and a damn good defense. You know, it's going to be fun to see who ends up being better. I obviously lean the defense just because of who they added and how good they already were. But this offense, I think, is going to take that next step. And Bo Nix is the perfect quarterback for Sean Payton, minus, obviously, Drew Brees.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you mentioned him, but your dark horse, Troy Franklin, the wide receiver. Where do you feel like he's really going to excel?
I think if they use him in the intermediate to short range more, that's where his game is going to evolve. Because coming out of college, and I could see the process of why they threw him to the fire the way they did with deep passes, but he really struggled tracking the ball in college during his time at Oregon, especially go balls. Like, he would have 2 to 3 yards on the DB, and like half the deep balls that he would have right here, he would drop because he just struggled looking over his shoulder and tracking the ball in, right? So that was a big kind of hang up he had in college. The Broncos, that was his most used route. 40% of his targets came 20-plus yards downfield on post, corners, go routes, and deep crossing routes. Like, that's not his strength, but I understand why they kind of did that because they didn't need him to be a guy last year. So they said, hey, when you get your reps, we're going to send you deep. Have fun with it. Like, use your speed. And sometimes he came down with it, but the majority of the time he didn't, and he just dropped it. I mean, I think the first significant game action he got, I played him in my starting lineup because I knew he was going to get a lot of snaps because they were pretty injured. I think the first target he got was a 50-yard bomb against the Chargers. He's in the middle of the end zone, and it just drops right out of his hands. And I was so mad. I was like, oh, my God. But either way, with those 40% of targets, another 30% of those came behind the line of scrimmage. So 70% of his targets were either way downfield or were on a screen. So it's like, do you know how to use this guy? I think they do. I just think they wanted to get him used to doing unconventional things that he's not, just to see where he was at in his development.
Yeah.
So I think coming into year 2, in a competition with Pat Bryant, which it looks like Troy's going to win early on, but Pat might win later on in the season. I think if they use him on those intermediate routes over the middle of the field and on the deep outs and stuff like that, like, that's where we're going to see Troy Franklin thrive, because that's what he did really well at Oregon. And he ran a really diverse route tree. One of the most diverse I saw in that class that I scouted. Like, Malik Neighbors did not run nearly as diverse of a route tree that he did, but Malik Neighbors obviously more talented. So it's like he was able to expand on that route tree in the NFL. Troy Franklin is like kind of a tier 2 receiver in that aspect where he has that ability to run a lot of routes, but he obviously is better in one area of the field than the other two. So I hope that Bo Nix and Troy connection can continue like it did at Oregon in the NFL. And that's why he's my dark horse, because I think a lot of people aren't talking about him, especially because he was like a 4th or 5th string wide receiver last year, and now he's pushing for wide receiver 2 reps. And I would love to see him go off this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the big burning question for the Denver Broncos, can they steal a division title from the Chiefs? And I kind of want to add a second part to this question. If they can steal a division title from the Chiefs, would they have to beat the Chiefs twice?
Yes. And I say this because...
Yes to both parts?
Yes to both parts. I think they can, and they have to beat the Chiefs twice in order to do it. And here's why. They almost beat the Chiefs, if not for a blocked field goal. And the only other time they saw the Chiefs was when the Chiefs were resting everybody, so they got an easy one in Week 18. So the only game we've seen of them going head-to-head with Bo Nix and Pat Mahomes and how good this defense is and where this offense is improving was a special teams play that ended the game, right? Like, and it was a low-scoring game. I think it was like 16-13 or something like that. But I think they can win the division if the Chiefs don't take the strides on offense that they're looking for. this defense plays similar to the last year, and the Broncos make good on their additions. Like, if all their additions hit, like, we're looking at a team who could be top 5 in the NFL this year, just in terms of depth and talent on both sides of the ball. Like, they are set up really, really nicely, and Sean Payton is one of the brightest offensive minds. Vance Joseph is a great defensive mind as well, and has the guys to run the exact defense that he wants to run. Like, the Chiefs are the only thing holding this team back from top 5 stardom. Like, and that's not hyperbole. Like, this could legitimately be one of the best teams in the NFL. And I think it all hangs on Bo Nix and making sure he progresses the right way. Because we talk about the sophomore slump a lot, and a lot of what he struggled with last year are signs for a sophomore slump. So if he can overcome those signs and add a level to his game and do better against pressure, because teams are going to know how to pressure him now, like, I think he's going to be really solid, and they're going to be a really damn good team.
Awesome. And then let's move on from the Broncos to the LA Chargers. This offense was pretty solid last year, obviously enough to make the playoffs. Where do you feel like they really excelled, and where do you feel like people kind of, I guess not where people underrated them, but what stuck out to you as to why people were ignoring some of their better qualities?
I think this pass game was underrated. I think people look at a typical Greg Roman offense as super savvy in the run game, lots of heavy personnel usage like 21, 22, 12 personnel, sometimes even 13, right? Like a lot of heavy personnel usage. And they think, oh, this is a running offense, right? And they look at Justin Herbert and they see his numbers drop off from a couple of years ago. And they're like, well, yeah, obviously that would happen in a Greg Roman offense. But almost the contrary happened. They were 12th in EPA per play, so they were top 12 offense from efficiency standpoint. And they were 12th in EPA per dropback. Like, Justin Herbert was damn good in this offense as a passer. And he was asked to do things he hasn't done before in his NFL career, and he did it at a good level outside of being pressured, which we'll get into. Outside of that, they were 18th in EPA per rush, but I think that was more the personnel they had rushing, like J.K. Dobbins had a couple of injury concerns, but when he was healthy early in the season, he was doing great. Then they had to lean on Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal, which are good players, but they're not going to push your offense to be top in the league in rushing, and that's what we see in their EPA per rush grade. So the passing offense was good, and the rushing offense was slightly below average, which is fine. But to help in the run game and make it better, they bring in Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton. And yeah, Najee's probably blind. Najee's probably not going to play this year because of the firework incident, but it was still a good process to add him to kind of add two better versions of Gus Edwards, right? And Kamani Vidal is a good spellback for Omarion Hampton. I think he has better receiving chops and is a better pass protector, where Omarion does have receiving chops, but his bread and butter is running between the tackles and hitting a crease and running over someone in the process. Like, that's what I think Omarion is really good at. I think he struggles a little bit with his wiggle once he gets outside of the tackles or gets into open space. We saw that at North Carolina, and we've seen it in the preseason multiple times. He's kind of like Tony Pollard, but a little bit slower. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that he's got more power and juice in his legs than Tony Pollard has, where Tony had home run ability. Omarion doesn't have that, but he does have better wiggle, better oomph on his runs than Tony Pollard does. And you'll see that this season as the Chargers go along. Pass games should be really effective. They've added a lot of really good pieces. Obviously, Ladd McConkey comes back after a really impressive rookie season, one of the best rookie receiving seasons we've seen in a good amount of years. He did good. Keenan Allen comes back as a veteran presence for some of these rookies and young guys. Trey Harris being one of the rookies who I think he had like 4.77 yards per reception, and against man coverage that went up to almost 6 yards per reception, which is just stupid. He didn't play all of last year because of injuries, but is a good, fun, deep to intermediate option. Quentin Johnston, if he could ever figure out how to actually play with the 6'4" frame, would be a good receiver. And then as far as the tight ends, they got a deep room. Two veterans, obviously, Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin. Dissly more of that run-blocking tight end. Conklin more of that pass-catching tight end. But someone who I think is going to be a really good move tight end for them is Oronde Gadsden II out of Syracuse. he has really fun tape, and they are raving about him in LA. I don't think he's going to start, but I think in running downs, he'll be the second tight end. And if they ever do passing downs with two tight ends, he'll remain the second tight end, and they'll put in Conklin for Disley, and they'll do that switch. And they'll have three tight ends that are probably going to command 25 plus targets each. Like, it's a good tight end room. It's really well rounded out. And then obviously can't end the offense without talking about Rashawn Slater and a big loss that it's going to be losing him. But on the bright side, you have Joe Alt, who has left tackle experience, and that's what they're moving. They're moving him to left tackle. And Trey Pipkins, who is a backup guard, has right tackle experience. They're going to move him to right guard, and everything should stay the same. As long as Mekhi Becton stays healthy, which he wasn't able to do in his career until last year with the Eagles, this should be a fine offensive line, even if the interior is a little lacking. Bradley Bozeman is one of the worst centers in the league, or worst starting centers in the league. I was kind of liking the idea of the Chargers moving Zion Johnson inside, but obviously with the injury, they're going to keep him at guard. So this way Pipkins can kick out to tackle, and they can run their offense the same way they've been doing the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of targets. Like,
that's a lot.
That's a lot of targets. So, like, where would you rank them among, just give me a general ballpark. Like,
yeah,
where would you rank them among the deepest receiving cores in the NFL?
I think this is the deepest, right? Like, and this is not including running backs. Like, I think the next closest team that we can talk about is, we'll talk about the Raiders because they have some guys that are pretty deep in the receiving room. But we just talked about, who did we just talk about in the NFC West? The friggin', the Seahawks are pretty deep. The Rams are somewhat deep. Maybe it was the AFC South. Oh, the Texans are really friggin' deep in their pass catching room. Yeah. Maybe that's the next closest team. Colts are in that category as well. Obviously in the NFC East, the Eagles always have guys who are doing really well. John Mechie is now in that receiver room. He's going to replace Johnny Wilson, who just got hurt, so he'll be really solid there. The Patriots, I know they're young, but they have a deep receiving room as well. Like, Chargers are definitely top 5 in terms of how deep and how differing these types of targets are going to be. And that's going to get the most out of Justin Herbert, not Justin Burrow. Jesus Christ. Happy Friday, everyone. But this offense is going to be really fun. I mean, you have really 9 guys you can attack, 4 receivers, 3 tight ends, 2 running backs, and maybe a 5th wide receiver that we'll talk about here in a second. Not to spoil anything, but I'm really high on the dark. Screw it. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about him. Your dark horse, Keandre Lambert-Smith.
Yeah, dude.
Another guy in this very deep receiving core. So what do you like out of him?
Yeah, he's had a stellar camp and has really made a name for himself. I know camp clips can get kind of, overfluffed, talked about too much, but I think this is a guy who could play right away. And until Trey Harris had a good second preseason game, he was looking like he was going to get runs with the ones, which I think is still going to happen at some point this season. But he transferred from Penn State to Auburn, and I don't know what it is about Penn State coaching staffs, but they just can't develop good wide receivers. He goes to Auburn, shines at his time in Auburn, and looks really good, looks like a much better receiver. He's got good downfield speed and wins contested catches like no one else. And he's got short area burst. So if you want to hit him on a slant or a quick dig or a crossing route or a quick out, he's going to win in that area too. With Quentin Johnston's injury, I think he's going to slot in as like wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 early. If Quentin stays out and or Trey Harris doesn't pan out or Keenan Allen, they want to use him only in the slot as a sub for Ladd McConkey, KLS has a fast track to get snaps in this offense. And that's best case scenario. Like, I'm thinking maybe 400 to 500 this year, but those are going to be all impactful for the type of player he is and the connection he already has with Justin Herbert. I mean, I can't sing my praise enough about KLS. Again, he's probably someone in your dynasty league, where Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is gone, or Bill Krosky-Merritt as he's nicknamed. But Keandre Lambert-Smith, I don't know what it is with these hyphenated last name guys, but they're in abundance this year. And he's another guy that fits that rookie bill to, if he gets the opportunity, he's going to be a stud.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Another solid group. So where do you feel like they can excel to kind of give this really deep offense some cushion here?
Yeah, I think this was one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, which kind of went unadvertised because, it's the Chargers. They're not going to get talked about for their defense based on history, but efficiency-wise, they were great. Jesse Minter out of Michigan ran a national championship defense, comes to the NFL, and basically runs the same exact defense, and it translated beautifully. They were fifth in EPA per play allowed and EPA per dropback allowed, and ninth in EPA per rush. One of the few teams to be top 10 in all three categories. And he did it running a shit ton of zone. They ran over 90% of their plays in zone coverage, and mainly in cover 4, cover 6, and cover 8. So obviously cover 4 is 4 deep players, but obviously that's with match coverage underneath it. So if you're a corner and your rule is to take anything short and your guy goes short, you trail him and someone else picks up your deep zone behind it based on the route progression, right? So they ran cover 4 21.3% of the time, which was the second highest in the league. And then between cover 6 and cover 8, which is pretty much the same coverage, but it switches based on offensive strength and what you call, they were at 13.3%, which was 7th in the NFL. So over a third of their play calls was deep zone match coverages, which is what Jesse Minter thrived calling when he was at Michigan. And for those listening at home, cover 6 and cover 8, basically it's you take cover 4 and cover 2 and you split it down the middle, where in cover 6, the strength of the defense plays cover 4 and the backside plays cover 2. And then cover 8 is the opposite, where the strength plays cover 2, where you have one deep half safety, the corner sits at the flat, and you have 2 middle defenders. And then the backside plays cover 4, where you have 1 middle defender, 1 flat defender, and then 2 deep corner zones. So it's a unique defense to run that works really well in the NFL, especially in an offensively loaded division that the Chargers play in, which is probably attributed to why they ran so much cover 4 and cover 6 compared to the rest of the league. But they were really good at that. They also wanted to trust their pass rushes to get home. They only blitzed just over 25% of the time, which is middle of the road in the league. But, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Puna Ford, Tierra Tart, Morgan Fox, is a fine pass rush unit. They have a couple of guys in there as well that are really solid. Tui Tulumoau, I'm going to mess up that name, but edge rusher out of USC was really good in year 2 as a designated pass rusher. But, the defensive line was fine, but now they've added more pieces to that. They added Jamari Caldwell, who's going to be a designated nose tackle for them out of Oregon, just an absolute space eater, can take up 2 gaps at a time, maybe 3 if he improves his lateral quickness, has that kind of run stopping ability, and is pretty okay in pass rush as well. Deshaun Hand, gritty veteran add there. He's played nose tackle, 3 tech, 5 tech. He's played wide 9 in some defensive structures. So he's got a lot of, experience, but he's probably going to be that over the tackle type defensive lineman. And then Kyle Kennard, who's pretty decent. I think he's a better run defender than a pass rusher, but, pretty solid rookie edge that they got, I believe, in the 4th round. So this defense really well rounded out. They obviously lose Christian Fulton, who was a perfect fit in this defense, but Tar Heap still was awesome out of Maryland last year and played really well in this defense. Got a lot of picks and pass breakups. If Cam Hart takes that next step, they're not going to miss a beat in the secondary. I think this is a really, really good secondary that's not getting talked about enough, especially boasting a 5th best pass defense EPA metric.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final question, I don't want to presume your answer. I think it's going to be yes, based on how we've talked about this team so far. But can the offense meet the quality of this defense?
In theory, yes. I don't think it does, just because of how this offense is run and being so run heavy that they're going to go away from the pass. If they lean into the pass more with all of these targets, which I hope they do, because what's the point of having all these guys if you're not going to use them in some massive capacity? This should be the offense should be better than the defense, and the defense is really freaking good as it stands, right? So I hope that they do take it to that next level, and I hope they do push the envelope with giving this offense as many passing opportunities as possible, because Justin Herbert is a good passer. He's a good quarterback. Even though I've rethought my top 10 because of what I've researched with Jalen Hurts, I still think he's a good quarterback and is a more than capable NFL passer. Now you have the guys to weaponize that. Like, please use it and please do something with it, John Harbaugh and Greg Roman. I'm begging you. NFL fans deserve it. And Justin Herbert no longer needs to be if man. Like, just be the do man, please. Like, do something with all of this talent that you have.
I totally agree. And let's get into our final team. Our final team of the division, our final team of this preview set.
The Raiders!
to challenge our inner Chris Berman.
Raiders.
Looking at this roster, on the coaching staff and just with among the player personnel, not to knock the Raiders teams of the first couple of years of their time in Las Vegas, but this really feels like one of the more star-studded rosters that we've seen. You got Geno Smith, you got calling the plays Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll at the helm, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, Dylan Laube. Like,
yes, sir.
What are we expecting from this offense?
This is going to be explosive and it's going to be fun, and they're going to be multiple because they have a lot of talent at the running back position, tight end position, receiver position. Obviously, much improved talent at the quarterback spot. Like, Geno Smith has a great arm, and that's something the Raiders have been missing since the Derek Carr days when he was in his prime before he broke his leg. They bring in Chip Kelly, and people think of Chip Kelly in the Eagles and UCLA offenses where it's spread out and they're running a lot of read option and triple option and short passes. Like, this is not the same Chip Kelly that was in the NFL over a decade ago. Like, this is a Chip Kelly that has embraced 12 personnel, 11 personnel, running well thought out run concepts and pass concepts and having things complement each other with motion. Like, this is a much, much better version of Chip Kelly than we've ever seen at any level he's coached at. And now he's at the NFL level with it, with an offense that caters perfectly to the type of offense he wants to run. So Geno Smith and Chip Kelly together is a great combo. And we'll get into some of the other weapons as well. Brock Bowers, again, is going to be the number one target. And with the return of Michael Mayer, he had some personal issues come up last year. He's seems like he's past that, and he's going to be playing more. I think the most used personnel for this team is going to be 12 personnel from a percentage standpoint, where Brock Bowers is going to be in the slot, Michael Mayer's a tight end, and then you have some mix of Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Jack Besh, and Dante Thornton at the receiver spots, which is just such a great skill set where Jacoby is that intermediate middle receiver who's going to catch anything you throw at him. Dante Thornton is going to be your deep threat, take the top off the defense. And Jack Besh is going to be that underneath guy. And Trey Tucker can just do it all. Like, he's not like great at any particular thing, but he's good at a lot of things. He's a deep threat. He can hit it over the middle of the field and run short routes to get open quick with his speed and athleticism. Like, you have a really good receiving core to kind of take advantage of what this offense can do in Chip Kelly's schemes. And that's without talking about the running game. Like, this was the worst rushing offense last year. Right. And like, part of that, selfishly, is because Dylan didn't get enough carries. He only got one. And unfortunately, TJ Watt, exists. Yeah. So we know what happens after that. But he got 2 offensive snaps the whole year. I think he could have elevated this running game a little bit, especially in the receiving game or as a receiving back threat out of the backfield and made teams play a lighter box against him. But, that's me being biased and selfish. But Ashton Genty, look, if I was the Raiders GM, I'm making the same exact pick. You had the worst rushing offense, and now you have one of the best running back prospects to come out of college since Saquon Barkley. Yeah, that's like, if I wish I was writing during this time in hindsight, because I remember my mock drafts in February. I was like, yeah, Ashton Genty is going to be the pick for the Raiders. And that did not change for me at all. He obviously was. He's going to add a really good rushing element to this team. He's got some pass catching chops as well. And he's backed up by Zamir White and Raheem Mostert, who have differing skill sets. Zamir White's going to run through your face, and Raheem Mostert is going to hit you on the outside and speed past you for 50 yards, even at his ripe age of 33. Or he might be 32. I know he's old for a running back. The only thing that might hold this offensive back is the offensive line. They've had some shuffling go around, and they're already not great there. Like Colton Miller's a stud. I really like Jackson Powers Johnson, but it seems like they're kind of like tweaking where he can play. Is he a center? Is he a right guard? It seems like they're going to plug him in at right guard, and Jordan Meredith's going to move from guard to center. Dylan Parham's pretty good, and DJ Glaze is a serviceable right tackle in the NFL. So as long as they all stay healthy, this should be a really, really good offense. But if you get one or two injuries to that offensive line, yikes. I don't know how it's going to hold up, and that has shown in the preseason games for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask about Ashton Jeanty. One thing that I saw, and this is like not the most important thing. It's just something I thought that was kind of fun. People highlighted that he's not using his fully upright stance behind the line anymore. He's kind of gotten into, in a couple of the preseason games that they've seen, he's kind of gotten into, more of a traditional running back, like prep stance, right? And, there are some people that are sad about it. But to me, I mean, I think that kind of just shows that, doesn't mean Ashton Jeanty's not going to bring the same intensity and style of play that he, that got him drafted, right? But, I mean, I think that also just shows that he's kind of ready to, like, adjust to the seriousness of the NFL. Not that college isn't serious, but the escalation in competition, and also, adjusting more into the Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll offense. So, like, for you, I mean, did that kind of show like a little bit of maturity for Ashton Jeanty a little bit?
I think if you read too much into it, but honestly, I think that's just a coaching preference, and that's kind of, it doesn't matter. Like Jahmyr Gibbs stands straight up in the backfield, and he's become one of the best running backs in the league early in his career. Like, I don't think it really matters. I think it's just a coaching preference. Like Chip Kelly wants a uniform looking offense, and he doesn't want tendencies to get shown. So he wants him in an actual football stance, which is fine. Like, that's coaching preference more than anything else. I don't think it's a maturity thing. I don't think it's a, because he was the damn best running back in the country last year, and he's standing straight up in the backfield, and he looks like Slenderman. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, stance is one of those things, like running back stance, like D-line stance we can get into. Like, there's different ways to do D-line stance, and like I think Tyree Wilson, who we'll talk about in a second, like I think has one of the worst defensive line stances in the league, but looks better this year than he ever has before. So stance is one of those things that's just coaching preference and isn't really like, I think people put too much stock into it. Like, I think Jeanty is going to be just as good as he was. Like, maybe not just as good as he was in college, averaging 10 yards a catch, but like, he's still going to be really damn good regardless of stance that he's in. And we've seen that around the league with guys, stand up or, having a full squat in the backfield. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get into the defense. Some really good guys, but the real question is, like, how well can they play as a larger unit? So for you, I mean, who are some guys that stand out on this defense, and maybe where have they struggled to kind of spread their talents among, the full 11 guys that are out on the field every play?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't start talking about the defense without mentioning Max Crosby. He's been one of my favorite players in the league ever since he got into the NFL. I've been a huge fan of his. I can't remember how many times I thought he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he's on track to win it, but he gets hurt, or he plays well enough to be a top 3 edge, but not win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, he is constantly at the top of some of the best defensive players in the league, and that comes from run stopping and pass rushing. Like, he's one of the few edges that is really damn good at both. And then around him, Tyree Wilson, who I alluded to, he's looked really good at getting more interior reps with the departure of Christian Wilkins, which I'm sure we'll talk about because that's a really, really weird situation.
Yeah.
And there's some speculation about it, but we kind of know the details of what happened. And then around those two guys, Malcolm Kuntz off the edge, who kind of took Tyree Wilson's spot last year, but now seems to be more pass rush rather than run stop guy. We'll see what happens with him. And then interior, Adam Butler, returning veteran, and Thomas Booker, the fourth, who they just added via a trade with the Eagles, looks to be solid. I mean, they have a deep defensive line, but I wouldn't say deep in talent. I think just deep in bodies who are NFL capable, if that makes sense. But a good D line all in all, and better than a good amount of D lines in the NFL. The linebacker room is completely changed. They brought in basically 4 new or 5 new rotational and starting players. The only returning linebacker from this room from last year is Tommy Eichenberg, who was a rookie. Outside of him, they have a Landon Roberts, who's one of the better run-stuffing LBs in the NFL. I mean, there was a clip in the second preseason game. He takes the center, like he's running to track down a run and lifts the center off the ground like he's sideways when he hits him. Like it's really sick. So Landon Roberts, really good in that category. Jermaine Pratt and Jamal Adams are definitely going to be the nickel and cover LBs. And Jamal's looked really good switching from safety to LB, even in run fits, like just running past offensive linemen and finding his spot to stretch out runs on the outside. We'll see how he does on inside runs if he's in there in the 4-3 package or 3-4, whatever they choose to run. We'll see what happens, but I kind of like the switch of him from safety to linebacker, especially since he understands Pete Carroll's defense. And I think the secondary can be the focal point. Like I know Max Crosby's a big name. Jamal Adams has been a big name before. They have some big names in the front seven. But this secondary, I think, could be the focal point. And I want to start with Darian Porter out of Iowa State. Oh, my God. You want to talk about just athletic traits, and he has the coverage skills and tenacity to back it up. Like, he should be a starter week one, in my opinion, and he should start opposite whoever they decide to put at the other cornerback spot. Like, this is someone who I think can run with other teams' wide receivers ones from the first snap of camp. Like, he is so damn good. And from what we've heard in camp, that looks like it's going to be the case. He's really solid. Isaiah Polomau and Jeremy Chin are going to be a really steady safety duo. I don't know who's going to play over the top more. Probably Polomau, and Chin's going to play underneath. But Chin's kind of had an up-and-down career, converted corner into safety, has found a home at the safety position, should be good in this style defense that runs a lot of cover three, so he'll be underneath rather than deep, which I think fits his skill set a little bit better. And then Caillou Blue Kelly is like, he was a name that was big in draft cycles a couple of years ago, has kind of floundered around the league, but he has shot up the Raiders depth chart over the past 3 weeks and he's right now listed as the starting corner opposite Darian Porter. Well, technically opposite Eric Stokes, but I don't know if that's going to stick. Eric Stokes is who he is at this point. But Caillou Blue Kelly has been great. I think he'll find a home at nickel as the season goes along, and that other corner spot is going to be battled with Decamerion Richardson and Eric Stokes. I love Decam Richardson. I think he'll end up winning that job at some point in the season. Eric Stokes is good for what he is, but I think in the evolution of this defense, Decam will end up winning that spot, and you'll have a really, really good secondary with lots of depth, no matter who you plug and play, really.
Absolutely. And then let's get into your dark horse. It's a guy that you've alluded to in that last segment, and it's Tyree Wilson, the defensive line. Had a little bit of a rough start to his career, but you feel like he's kind of adjusted and can kind of make a big splash on this defense. How so?
Yeah, he's getting it used in different ways because of what happened with Christian Wilkins, which we could talk about that now before I get into Tyree Wilson.
Yeah.
For the listeners at home, it was a couple of things. Number one, it was an injury that he had. There's reports that, doctors had said, hey, you need surgery. Hey, you need surgery. He had said that, no, I'm good. I can recover from this without surgery. Ended up not being the case. So not listening to medical advice when you're on an NFL contract that kind of requires you to do that is kind of, that's an issue in and of itself. But then the next piece is that he was harassing players in the locker room. Really? There were some players that came out and said, for me, in a vacuum, I don't think it's a big deal, but I think it is a big deal in just people's comfortability and, just how people feel, about certain things. But he was going around and jokingly kissing guys on their forehead. And again, this is alleged, this is what's reported, but has been confirmed by multiple sources, right? So, he was just going around, just doing things that, you need boundaries on. And, it's a really sticky conversation because I don't, and not to use a big buzzword, but I don't want to sound homophobic, but there's still there's consent. There's being letting people be comfortable in a space and have not a safe space, but be able to be comfortable in their own skin and just hang out and be themselves. We give a guy like that, kind of doing that and what's been said multiple times by multiple different people, it kind of makes it uncomfortable. And so I think that's a big point that a lot of people were kind of missing in this. And he was obviously released by the Raiders, obviously red flag with the medicals. Now you can't even be a good locker room guy. And I think what kind of put it over the top was there was a video of him. He's not able to practice, but there was a video of him dancing in the locker room and like not just like dancing, like moving his hips, like using
Really
his legs, doing like really getting into it. And I think that's kind of what was like, yeah, all right, let's pull the plug. Like we'll eat the money on this, whatever. And there's been some reports of like some stuff he was doing at Clemson that's come to light because of it. And it's like, and there's a reason why he hasn't been signed between the injuries and not being a locker room fit. Like he's a funny guy to listen to, but like this is all checking out. Like this is not like a dude you want to have in an NFL locker room. Like I think that speaks for himself. He would have been signed somewhere and stashed on IR if it really was an injury thing. I think it really is a behavioral thing that a lot of teams do not want in their NFL locker room right now, especially in the state of things. But with the Christian Wilkins thing, that gives Tyree Wilson a bunch of opportunities on the inside where they're lacking at D tackle. He's 6'6", pushing 280 pounds, has a massive wingspan. I think it's like 84 inches or something like that, which is absurd. He's kind of been an afterthought after struggling for 2 years, but, his fit on this defense, I think he's going to be starting at edge on early downs, first and second down. And as we transition into pass downs or 2-minute drills, they're going to move him inside and let him use his length and bull rushing ability to take advantage of guards who aren't as fast as him, and he's just as strong as to be able to bench them off and put them into the laps of quarterbacks. And I think that's going to unlock a different level of this defense that's been missing since he got drafted here. I believe he was 7th overall in that draft class, which I was stupid high on him. I had him just behind Will Anderson in that entire draft class, not just the edge position. So I hope he can kind of figure it out. I think he's a good run stopper. I think he's worked on some pass rush stuff. His get off has gotten a lot better over the past couple of years, and we see that in the preseason this year. So we'll see how it translates to regular season games. But as of right now, I think Tyree is in for his best year yet, and not just best year, and he improves a little bit. We're going to see the biggest jump of his career so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, the big question for the Raiders, I mean, is there a reality where this team doesn't finish in last place? And, if we could, improve their goals a little bit more here, like, is there a reality where they sneak into a wild card spot?
I don't know if playoff are in their picture because of how shallow the offensive line is and just a lot of new pieces on offense and defense. Like, it's very rare you add all this talent and it clicks right away. I would like for them, I think a good goal for them is 7-10. Like, you improve on your bad record last year. You take advantage of this really good offense. You use your brand new running back and maybe your scat back return specialist, Jordan Laube, who's going to be a special teams demon if he makes this roster, which we'll find out by Tuesday. But if they use the guys in the right positions, and look, Chip Kelly has that UNH connection. Dylan's a UNH guy. Hopefully they use Dylan on 100 to 200 offensive snaps this year. We'll see what happens. But, me being biased and putting my own personal spin on it. I think this offense is going to be really fun. I think this defense still has some growing to do with Pete Carroll running at the helm. And we'll see what happens. But I think 7-10, 8-9 is a good goal. If you can exceed that goal and go like 9-8, they might not be a wild card team. They might be, depending on how the other, loaded divisions in the AFC do. But, I think this could be a really fun team to watch offensively. Defense probably needs another year or two to be at full strength. But, I really like the prospects they brought in and how they project throughout the next couple of years.
All right, man, we did it. 32 teams out of 32. We have covered all 8 divisions in the NFL in their 2025 outlook. Obviously, there is still some time before the season, so we will be going back and doing our research and finding out anything that might have changed, whether injuries, roster moves, etc. Obviously, a big one in our last episode was the Brian Robinson move from the Commanders to the 49ers. So stuff like that you can keep an eye out for in our kind of addendum appendix episode that will release shortly before the start of the season. But until then, make sure you follow House Enterprise on all the social media that you see below. Head to houseenterprise.com/the blog for more great. That's house-enterprise.com. I want to emphasize that for more great NFL coverage, for some more great basketball coverage. We got college basketball on the way just as quickly as football is on the horizon. Make sure you follow Jordan at Jordan Laube FB on X, and then make sure you follow me at the socials you see down below.
Twitter.
And then if you want to get a specific breakdown on your team, you can head to the playlist on the House Enterprise YouTube page, where we've essentially cut up all the segments from each of the podcasts that we've done and put them into a 32-team playlist for you to check out. And with the conclusion of this episode, that playlist is now complete. So, Jordan, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
Weeks, for putting this together with me. And for more great coverage, make sure you head to houseenterprise.com. And so for myself and Jordan Laube, this has been the Basel Pod, and we'll see you guys next time.